So we're still in Unit 2, operations with rationals, and today we're going to specifically work with operations with decimals. I'm on page 13 in your packet and also page 112 in your textbook. This is 2.6 in the textbook, so you can have that open and follow along with me. Now again, the Singapore model is going to work horizontally across, and we've learned to add and subtract decimals by lining up decimal points, very important, but we also do that vertically. So you're going to see that I'm going to do it vertically. In the example in the book, we'll do it horizontally. So first example A, negative 5 and 21 hundredths plus 2 and 49 hundredths. So yes, you have to have the larger absolute value first in your subtraction, or larger absolute value number on the top, subtracting from it the smaller absolute value, and you can see the book again does it horizontally, we do it vertically, and the answer that they got is 2 and 72 hundredths. Letter B here, negative 2 and 34 hundredths minus 6 and 21 hundredths. Again, larger absolute value should come on the top. However, this is a subtraction problem. So first thing that we learned from our integer rules is that subtraction should be rewritten as adding the opposite. So you can see here that they changed it to adding the opposite, or negative 6 and 21 hundredths. So now they have same signs, add and keep. So we're going to add these rational numbers, 6 and 21 hundredths. So it really doesn't matter which one is on top here. And you can see that they added 2 and 34 hundredths and 6 and 21 hundredths. So you get 5 hundredths and 5 tenths and 8 ones. And yes, same sign, add and keep. So use the common sign or the negative sign. So the answer is negative 8 and 55 hundredths. I'm going to do it in this space here. 6 and 13 hundredths would be on top. It's a larger absolute value, minus 2 and 35 hundredths. So we're going to have to borrow here because it can't do 3 take away 5, can't do 1 take away 3, so I'm going to come all the way to the ones place and borrow and continue borrowing down. So I have 13 hundredths minus 5 hundredths, which is 8 hundredths. Notice I did line up my decimal point. They are all straight in a line, bringing my decimal point down. So tenths is over tenths. 10 tenths minus 3 tenths gives me 7 tenths. And 5 take away 2 is 3 and 78 hundredths. Keep the sign of the larger absolute value. So yes, this is negative 3 and 78 hundredths. I'd like you to pause the video for a moment and do number 2 because it's related to the couple examples that I just worked out. Try to do number 2 on your own, and then I'll come back and give you the answer. So press pause. Well, hopefully you worked that out and you put the 5 and 27 hundredths on the top and the negative 3 and 53 hundredths on the bottom to get a positive 1 and 74 hundredths for the answer. If you didn't get that, take a moment, pause the video, see if you can find your error in your work and come to that same answer, positive 1 and 74 hundredths. If not, if you can't get that answer, let's go over it tomorrow in class. I'm going to move on to example number 3. Evaluate here is the direction, which means give me a value to this answer. Well, it's a subtraction of a rational number. Well, I know that I have to keep the first rational number and add the opposite. Change subtraction to adding the opposite. Keep, add, up. Well, now they have the same sign, so same sign rational numbers. I'm going to add those numbers and keep the sign. So it really doesn't matter which one is on top. So 2 and 5 hundredths and 3 and 65 hundredths. And I'm going to add those. I get 10. Carry that 1. Bring down my decimal point, lining them up correctly. And I get 5 and 7 tenths, or 5 and 70 hundredths. That 0 really has no value. So you could just say negative 5 and 7 tenths. And yes, it is negative because I'm going to keep the sign of both negative rational numbers being added together gives you a smaller rational number of negative 5 7/10. To the next page, adding and subtracting decimals in some real-world situations. So you can see the example worked out here. The water level in a pond was 4 21/100 feet. During a heavy downpour, it rose by 1 19/100 feet, but in the summer, the water level then dropped by 2 32/100 feet. What is the final water level? So here's the expression, no equal sign here, that matches with that word problem. 4 21/100 is where it started. It downpours, so it rose, so you can see that they're using that as an add. And then the water level dropped, which means then subtracting. And here's the correct expression. So first thing they did here, obviously, is added, yes, because add, then subtract, left to right in this correct order of operations here. They added the 4 21/100, didn't show you that, and added 1 19/100 to get that 5 4/10, or 5 40/100, minus the 2 32/100. So 5 40/100 minus the 2 32/100. Line up your decimal points. Well, 0 hundredths take away 2 hundredths you can't do, so we're going to borrow from our tenths. 10 take away 2 is 8. 3 take away 3 is 0. And 5 take away 3 is 3. And so, yes, the water level, the final water level, is 3 8/100 feet. Nice sable there, sentence answer box label. So let's see if we can do number 4 together. At noon, the temperature was 70 5/10 degrees Fahrenheit. By midnight, the temperature dropped, key math word there, by 10 9/10 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to fill that part of the expression in. 70 5/10 is where it started. It dropped, so there's my subtraction sign, 10 9/10. The next morning, the temperature rose, meaning adding, going up, 12 1/10 degrees Fahrenheit. What was the final temperature? So we're going to add in that 12 1/10 temperature. So I am going to subtract here first. Write this expression. I'm going to subtract here first because subtract now is on the left, and we work add and subtract as equal operations, left to right. So 70 5/10 minus 10 9/10. Well, 5/10 minus 9/10, I'm going to have to borrow here. Can't borrow from my 0 1, so I'm going to borrow from my 7/10. Continue borrowing down, and I get 15/10 minus 9/10, which is 6/10. Bring down my decimal point. 9 take away 0 is 9. 6 take away 1 is 5. And I get 59 6/10 for that subtraction part of simplifying my expression. And now lastly, I'm going to add my 12 1/10 to that. So I'll come over here into the white space. Adding 12 1/10, lining up your decimal points. 9 and 2 is 11, carry the 1. 71 7/10 degrees Fahrenheit. There's my label in my answer, answered as a full sentence. Math literacy, being math literate. The final temperature is 71 7/10 degrees Fahrenheit. A water tank has a water level of 8 5/10 feet. Due to a leak, the water level fell by 2 21/hundredths of a feet. The tank was then repaired and more water was pumped into it. The water level rose by 3 27/100 feet. What is the new water level? Well, it's just like the problem that we had above here. We're starting with 8 5/10 feet. The water leaked out, so I'm losing some water of 2 21/100 feet. They repaired it, and then I'm going to pump in 3 27/100 feet. What is the new water level? So that's the expression that matches with that word problem. And again, I'm going to subtract before I add because order of operations says work them left to right. So 8 5/10 minus 2 21/100ths. Well, I have no hundredths here. Yes, you're going to annex a 0, and 0 take away 1 is not 1. You're going to have to borrow from that 5/10. Give yourself 4/10 and then 10/100ths. Minus 100 is 9/100ths. 4/10 minus 2/10 is 2/10. Bring down your decimal point that you lined up, and 8 take away 2 gives you 6. And 29/100ths is the feet, 6 and 29/100ths feet of water in there before we add in the new 3 and 27/100ths. So I'm going to add those off to the side again, show my computation, line up my decimal points, very key thing when you're working with decimals. 9 and 7 is 16, carry that 1, you get 5, bring down my decimal point. Now I have 9 and 56/100ths feet of water in the tank. The water tank, and I'm going to answer that in a full sentence, has 9 and 56/100 feet of water in it. I could answer it a couple ways. The level of water in the tank is now 9 and 56/100 feet. Some kind of sentence that has the feet and the total amount of water in it would be acceptable. At noon, the temperature was 63 and 9/10 degrees Fahrenheit. By midnight, the temperature dropped 8 and 5/10 degrees Fahrenheit. The next morning, it fell further by 2 and 3/10 Fahrenheit. What is the final temperature? So my starting temperature, 63 and 9/10 degrees Fahrenheit, must be a very accurate thermometer. The temperature dropped, so that's implying subtracting 8 and 5/10 degrees Fahrenheit. Then it fell further, again suggesting subtraction here is the correct operation to represent that. So 63 and 9/10, take away 8 and 5/10, take away 2 and 3/10. That would be the expression that would match with that word problem. So I'm going to go ahead and do it one step at a time, and again, lining up the decimal points is a key thing with decimals that you learned a few years back. So 9/10 take away 5/10 is 4/10. I'm going to borrow from my 6. 13 take away 8 is 5. So I have 55 and 4/10. And then remember, it continued to fall. It further fell 2 and 3/10. So when we line up our decimal points, we get 1/10. Then we get 53 and 1/10 was the final temperature. The final temperature was 53 and 1/10 degree Fahrenheit. Nice big sentence there. So be ready to do that in class tomorrow. We'll be working on pages 15 and 16.